I think another thing is people get ahead of themselves, hire super fast. They're just running. We'll figure out the core values later. And there is no later,
I
So
can't tell you many times I've seen that. Even with coaching clients, I'm like, what are your core values? They don't even know. And it's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I really feel like I really want people to hear this. You feel like it's a waste of time and it's fluff and it's whatever. But if you don't take the time to do that stuff, it will be exposed in your business down the road.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast, hosted by Eric Nelson and brought to you by Wild Oak Capital. Eric is a real estate investor, business owner, and performance coach. Throughout this series, Eric explores the mindset behind why certain investors are so successful and how we can learn from their achievements and failures. Eric asks the tough questions around the habits, discipline, mindset, and more required to achieve the most ambitious goals. Thank you for being here and enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Eric Nelson. Today, super excited to have Melissa Johnson on. Melissa, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I always do kind of the standard thing is say, can you give us an intro, where you're from, background, and then, what led you to real estate and your background in it?
Sure. So I got started in real estate back in 2003, I think. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I've always been in San Antonio as far as real estate goes. Only invest here. Started out, I got into it from actually my ex-husband's father was doing it. And he used to be a contractor. And then the investor he was working for started mentoring him. And so it kind of just started this journey of like watching him and then seeing like this really cool life that he was living. He had this cool RV and they were traveling a lot. And it seemed like a really cool life to have. And, I didn't really think about real estate very much at the time. I was working for a defense contractor, kind of a boring job, nowhere to really, no growth there or anything. So that was kind of difficult. And then seeing him just having all this freedom, not even just the money, but just the freedom. I really was into that, after sitting in a cubicle all day long and, getting up at the crack of dawn and taking my kids to daycare every day. It was just a hamster wheel. And so, so we got a mentor and did our first deal while we were still working full time. And that continued actually for a couple of years. We did real estate part-time while we were still both working full-time jobs. And then about a week before we were going to get married, my husband got laid off. And so we decided to just he went full-time first, and then I followed shortly after. And
it's an easier transition if it's not your choice, but I mean, it still maybe worked out, right? So we'll
it did. It did. And the funny thing is, like, when I look back at it and think about like that time, I never thought that it wasn't going to work out. I just really believed that we could do it, and we did. And like, we got that first check, and I remember looking at that check and saying, my God, this is like my whole year's salary, like net, on this one check. And it was so mind-blowing, and so we built that up into a business for many years, and it was just the two of us for a really long time, all the way until I think 2014, somewhere around there. And that's when we started a software company for real estate investors, so doing websites and building CRM system for real estate investors. And we kind of split off from there. So I took over running the house flipping business, and he continued running the software business because we were just too like intertwined with all the companies and everything. So at that point, I hired a team, built the team up. We just exploded the house flipping business, and it was just great, seeing all that growth and everything. It's like, why didn't we do this sooner? Crazy. What were we thinking? But it worked out. I mean, the marriage didn't work out, but everything else did. So that was good. And now I'm still doing that. I'm doing coaching. And I'm working in another software company too for real estate investors. So got a lot going on.
You sounds like it. Yeah. Well, I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit because for me, there's like 15 things in there that were super good and we can touch on. So first of all, I mean, you saw someone, it sounds like it was your ex-father-in-law who had the lifestyle basically that you wanted. And even though maybe you mentioned you didn't you didn't even believe that that was something you could do or achieve perhaps, it still planted the seed. And it's so interesting to look back at those like moments in time, like that planted a seed that later helped you probably envision the future. And then yeah, so the other thing that you said was that you just believed it would happen. So my coach has asked me this before. He said, well, what makes you think that you can do it? He's not suggesting I can. He's just kind of like poking questions.
Mhm.
And it's, my response is kind of like, well, I just think that I can. I have no belief that I can't. There's no reason why not, kind of thing. And it sounds like you kind of have that same mindset. And I'm not suggesting I even understand it, but that's a pretty powerful tool. So for listeners out there, you can do anything you want to do. Just have the belief behind it. So Melissa's a good example of like, just go for it. And then I'd like to kind of dive in a little bit more about your deal. So it sounded like, do you do exclusively flips or do you do, any other kind of investing, or is that kind of your zone?
Yeah. So, excuse me. So when we started, it was primarily flips because that was what our mentor was doing. But it was also a time of, this is all pre like 2008 crash kind of stuff. So different time, different market. But one of his strategies was to buy properties and sell them with owner financing. And so that became an exit strategy for us as well. So we started while we were flipping, we were also building up a portfolio of notes and rental properties too at that time, because like I said, the mentor was doing it. And I quickly realized this is way better than rentals. Like I know we need to have rental properties, but I was managing all of it. I was doing all the property management, all the bookkeeping of all that, and all the note servicing. And it was quite a bit. So those were our three main exit strategies for several years. When I started building the team, though, we transitioned more to wholesaling. So we had done some random like one-off wholesale deals throughout the years, but it wasn't a thing like it is now. Like it wasn't, there wasn't any assignments of contracts and stuff like that back then. You had to close on it and then turn around and sell it, that kind of stuff. We didn't have a big buyer's list or anything, but we did a few here and there. And so that was really good. And so I really feel like those are like the four main exit strategies. And it's been good knowing all those exit strategies because as the market moves and shifts, we know which ones to deploy at that time. So when wholesaling was hot, we could wholesale. When it kind of died off a little bit, we moved more into flipping and vice versa. And it made it to where could really start cherry picking the deals a little bit better too. I didn't have to flip everything. I didn't feel like I had to rehab every property that came in. I was able to put criteria and say, you know what, I would love to flip that house, or, I'm going to pass on flipping that, but I know there's plenty of meat on the bone here. So why don't we just wholesale it, and make a quick 15 and get out from under it.
Yeah. It's a very powerful tool to have multiple, like, like the analogy is the tool belt, right? It's like, which tool in this belt can I use for which property works? So
Right.
how do you typically source the properties? And maybe now that you have a team, it's a little different. I guess, how did you source and how do you source properties now?
Still everything off market.
And you
So
do
we
like
don't buy
campaigns, like driving for dollars. Do you do like Deal Machine, anything like that?
Yeah, it started off with like all the traditional stuff. So when we started, it was a lot of driving for dollars, bandit signs at 5 a.m. We had billboards at one time, yellow page ads, which actually performed really well.
Wow. Are you sure this is 2000s, not in the 90s?
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know why we did. It was like towards the end of like the whole phone book era, I think.
Yeah.
But we got in just in time. But like, if you think about it, at that time, especially old people weren't really using the internet very much. And so they would still go to the yellow pages. So it seemed like that demographic that was a perfect campaign for that demographic.
Oh yeah.
So we
I
didn't
love
pick
that
up a lot of
strategy.
properties that way.
Cool. So are you still holding notes now? Like, will you still sell some with owner finance
Hmm.
type? Okay. So you still use that exit strategy now?
Yes. It's one of
Awesome.
my favorites.
Yeah. And I think a lot of buyers would like that too. I mean, you see buyers who maybe wouldn't qualify, or, you guys can get a little creative in a way that maybe they couldn't buy the property with different financing. Maybe you guys can come in and help them out. I love that strategy. And then, wholesaling, yeah, it's become pretty hot, of course. I mean, people are doing it like crazy, but it's still a really cool tool, especially like you said, if there's meat on the bone where you said, I don't want to deal with that particular one, or I don't have the bandwidth, or my team's used up or whatever. That's cool. So I guess that leads me to my next transition. Can you talk about what it was like building a team and how you built that, and then any sort of strategies that listeners can take if they're building a team?
Yeah. So that was an interesting time of life because I'd never built a team. I had never been in a leadership position in any of the jobs that I ever had. So I knew nothing about hiring people, about managing people, about being a leader, like none of it. I knew nothing. I was so green. But, the first thing I did was to figure out, we made that split between the companies. I said, okay, well, it was just the two of us wearing all the hats, like all the hats, project management, bookkeeping, like I did everything. It was a lot. So I had to figure out quickly what is the first thing I need to offload here? What is the thing that I don't feel like I'm very good at? I don't really have an interest in developing that side of myself, whatever. And it came to me quickly that it's acquisitions. Like I'm really good at building rapport, but I struggle with the close. And so I knew that wasn't my strongest point. I knew I have other talents that were better used in other places. So that was how I determined who the first hire was going to be, just based on the need of, what can I do well and what do I not do well. So I brought the acquisition person on, and that was going really well. And then I transitioned him into another role because I realized he was good at acquisitions, but he was even better at managing people. So I moved him into more of a kind of marketing and COO sort of role, or manager, I guess. And then brought in a new acquisitions person who was really good at acquisitions and completely focused on it. And then from there, it was just kind of like a snowball thing of like, okay, now we're ready for a lead manager because the acquisitions person's getting overwhelmed. So let's bring a lead manager in. Okay, now that spot's full. But I never had an intention of building a large team. I never wanted, 20 people in an office and all that. I'm not interested in that. I like having a small team, and I like doing profitable deals. So I'm not interested in volume. I'm interested in profit. So I don't have to do so many if I'm making good money off of all of them. And with the small team and the low overhead, it really works out. So that was kind of how I hired people. And then just like learning so much along the way, I really spent a lot of time working on myself, working on personal development, leadership. I read a lot of books. I read all of Patrick Lencioni's stuff, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend, if you have not read The Advantage, to read that. It
You're
kind of
jumping ahead.
mirrored.
One of my questions is a book you can recommend. I'm just kidding. No,
It's a good one. It's a good one if you find
though.
yourself in that position. And the CEO one was really good for me too. The 5 dysfunctions of a team, like all of his stuff was good. But point being, I guess, I had to spend a lot of time learning how to be a leader, not a manager, but a true leader of people, and really, figure out like what are our core values. And we spend a lot of time with that activity, and we have like amazing core values now. That are also my personal ones. And I hire and fire based on those now. So it wasn't work for nothing, but it was a process, and then figuring out a hiring process and all these other things that go along with that, training people, figuring out how to train them. And just, there was so much learning during that time, probably 2 years, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think what you said is awesome. Like, you took the time to consider core values. And, I think a lot of people, even when we talk about mindset, like I've heard this several times on my show, people say, well, early on, I thought of mindset as kind of this like fluff, or like, extras, like where's the meat? Where can I get to the thing? And I think some people think of like talking about core values and like focusing on leadership is that as well. But
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, that's what makes longevity. It's like
Oh, I
having
agree.
integrity and core values at the heart of what you're doing is incredibly valuable. So so kudos to you for spending the time to do that. Cause I think another thing is people get ahead of themselves, hire super fast. They're just running. We'll figure out the core values later. And there is no later, So
I can't tell you many times I've seen that. Even with coaching clients, I'm like, what are your core values? They don't even know. And it's funny. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I really feel like I really want people to hear this. You feel like it's a waste of time and it's fluff and it's whatever. But if you don't take the time to do that stuff, it will be exposed in your business down the road. It really will. Like if you don't know, who you are and what you represent and the type of people you want in your organization and what is your culture, if you don't spend the time to define that, you will run into problems down the road. I guarantee you will. You've got to take the time to
really
do
good
that.
advice. Yeah, I totally agree. I love it. Cool. So I guess that's a good transition. I know that you do some coaching. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about what it looks like in your experience with coaching?
Yeah, I love coaching. So first of all, I should say I've been doing this for 18 years and I have had a coach or mentor at some point during this entire journey, and so we had a mentor when we first started, which was great for the beginning part. When I started building a team, because I didn't know how and I didn't know about leadership and all that kind of stuff, I hired a coach to help me with all that. And that was really helpful. When I started my own coaching business last year, I hired a coach to help me do that. So I believe in the power of coaching. Like no matter where you're at in your journey, if you're just starting or even if you've been doing it for a long time, there's always room for improvement. And I just feel like coaching the right coach is such a huge benefit to you, just to benefit from their experience and their wisdom. And, if they're a good coach, they're going to guide you. They're not going to give you the answers. They're going to guide you and help you figure it out for yourself, because we're all different. We're all on a different journey. We all have different goals. And sometimes how we get there doesn't look the same for everybody. And that's really something that I put into practice with my own coaching. I primarily coach women. Like we talked about earlier, I'm not opposed to coaching men, but none of that's worked out yet. But I have had many women clients and couple clients. And, I start with, I call E3. So it is to encourage, to educate, and to empower. And those are my three pillars that I coach on, because I feel like, the encouragement is really mindset and working on that first, because if you're going to be an entrepreneur in this space, you've got to have a good mindset. So we start there. And then education to me is like the nuts and bolts. This is how we do this. This is how we find leads. This is how we track our marketing, all that kind of stuff. And then empowerment for me with my clients, what my hope is that, they get going on the right path and they feel empowered to go and help others do the same thing. So that's my approach.
No, I mean, your approach, I think, is amazing. So I do some coaching as well, and I believe in coaching wholeheartedly. You're kind of poaching all my questions because that's one of the questions later as well.
Sorry, no, I'm ruining your flow.
No, it means that we're on like the same wavelength here. So no, but I think you nailed it on the head. So for me, I don't want to say that my story is similar to yours because it's likely not, but I believe in what you just said. Is the mindset comes first. It's super, super important, super powerful. And that's why I have this podcast. Education, incredibly important. I mean, that's part of podcasting as well, is get the word out. But I always say the first step is to get educated. But, a coach will take you there further and faster. It's just a reality. The right coach. I'm glad that you said that too.
Yeah, it's got to be the right coach.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think everything you just said, it resonates so strongly with me. I hope it does with listeners as well. As I think for me, the coach doesn't have to be incredibly expensive either. I mean, there's packages out there that, in my opinion, are insanely expensive. But if you find the right coach, it could cost you some money. It will absolutely be worth it if you follow through with that. So I don't want to dive too far into that. But you do also, I mean, I love the empowering thing. So, I've seen on your website, I've heard you say in other podcasts and stuff that you have a group and you empower women. Can you discuss that a little bit as well?
Yeah. So not only do I try to do that with my coaching clients, but I do run a local group here in San Antonio that's an offshoot of a larger national group. And I really love it. I love getting all these women together, and we have a good time, and we talk and we learn and we share things. And it's crazy, people come into the group, and there's all levels of people in the group, right? There's people that have never done a deal, there's people that have done a few deals, there's maybe one or two like me that have done a lot of deals. And so it's fun to have that group of people, because when you start talking and you're listening to people they don't realize how much they actually know. So I love seeing the women that have done a few deals kind of helping the ones that haven't done anything. It's just I just love seeing that. I love that energy and that willingness to share. It really help grow the community.
Oh, super cool. And this is something I love about real estate too, is this particular sector is so helpful. I mean, honestly, if you're getting into real estate, if you're new, find a local meetup. I promise you there's one out there. Go to meetup.com. There's ones near you. I mean, there always is. Go to one and find people doing the same thing, and they will help you. It's incredible. So Melissa, good for you for running that group. I mean, that's so cool that you put that on and you kind of provide that place and platform, but very, very cool. So the second part of my show, I kind of transition into a little bit more mindset stuff. And even though we've kind of covered a handful of the questions, I'll still ask them because we could probably dive in deeper. But if you're ready, I'll kind of fire them off.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have a morning routine?
Morning routine. I was always so good with my morning routine, and I feel like COVID just knocked it out of the, I don't know, whatever. I was doing really well until I wasn't. But my normal routine, it kind of varies, right? Because I have kids. And so being like a single mom, my routine isn't always my routine. So it's a lot easier. We're in school. So summertime's been not so routine wise, but once they get back in school, the normal routine for me is I like to get up, take them to school. I come back. I'd like to get a workout in, and I like to do a little meditation and some journaling just to kind of set my mind right up for the day. And then I get started, and I try to, I have this bad habit of like brain dumping all the things I need to do. So I end up with this like huge list of stuff. So I've really started to be more conscious of picking like the one or two things that are the most important and really focusing on those during my peak energy times. And this is something that I really want to share because I feel really strongly about this. It's something I learned during the last year with COVID and everything shut down and the craziness. But what I learned was that I'm not a morning person, and it's okay. There's so many people out there that's like, you have to be up at like 4 a.m. or whatever, and you got to like do all this stuff. And that just feels so overwhelming to me. And I think that people get intimidated by that because they think, well, if I'm not doing all those things, I won't be successful. And that's not true. You have to figure out for yourself what success looks like, first of all, and then figure out like what I figured for me was that, I'm not like, I don't sleep late, but I'm not a super early riser. Like it takes me a while to get going in the mornings. So I have way more energy, like right before lunch, and then another after lunch, and then usually another one like around this time, about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So if I'm still working at 5 or 6, I'll probably work till like 8:30 or 9, which isn't always good, but I take it slower during the day. So I kind of work with my body's natural rhythms, with the sleeping, with eating, with work, all those things. So when I feel inspired and ready to do something, then I feel like I give my best during those times. So it might not match up with what other people are doing, but it still accomplishes the same thing, but it's on my own schedule, I guess, my own rhythm.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because, part of the reason I asked the question is that everyone has their own style. And I always say it's whatever works for you, right? But I think the main reason I ask it is because it comes with intentionality. It's like, are you intentional about when you're working, what you're doing? Because if you're kind of spraying, or if you're just guessing, or if you're not headed for some path, then you're likely not going to achieve that, especially if you don't even know where you're going. Right. So I always say, like, start with the end in mind, start with your why, and then, then you can kind of set intentions. And then you mentioned the one thing, I mean, that book is incredible too. Like, the one thing that you can do today, to kind of, what's the most important thing you can do? And if you can do a little piece of something towards your goals every day, super powerful. And I'm really glad that you said, you don't have to be an early riser. You don't have to be a morning person to be
To be
quote unquote
successful.
successful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you jam at night, go for it. Maybe I'd encourage you to consider time blocking or something, like, not you, but anyone, so that you're not like super crazy sporadic, but at the same time, you don't have to wake up at 4 or 5 or 6 to be successful. There's a handful of guests who have a similar story of like, nah, I sleep in late, I work later, I do better in the afternoon, whatever it might be. And the other thing you mentioned, which, I've kind of been holding off, and I'm bringing this up, but you have 5 kids, right? So
I do.
that's incredible. First of all, kudos to you. I mean, raising kids is the hardest job on the planet. I have 2, and I feel like, it's a lot, and they're amazing. But can you talk a little bit about that before we go on to the next question? And what's it like to have 5 kids and manage them and then manage a business?
Well, my kids rock. I love them. I think they're all amazing. And it's been so fun watching them, because I have older kids and I have younger kids. So my oldest daughter's 29. So she's already married and graduated from college. She's out of the house. She's got her career going. She actually has just gone into entrepreneurship herself. So that's been exciting.
Cool.
And then I've got twins that are 22. They're both in college, about to graduate. And then I've got a 13-year-old daughter at home, and then a 9-year-old son. So the poor boy's the only boy, and he's the baby. But I can't tell you, like, I love them so much, all of them. They're all so unique and different. And it's been really fun as a parent, especially as I've learned things, to share it with them and to see. It's really like seeing your legacy in action, because legacy to me isn't just leaving a bunch of wealth behind. It's like, what kind of people are we leaving behind? How are we impacting the people that we care about in our lives? And like, I heard my son, he was playing a video game yesterday, and he was raging first, and then he got over that. And then I heard him talking to his friend about mindset. He's 9, a boy, and he's 9, and he's talking to his friend about mindset in hockey, because he plays hockey and his friend plays hockey, and they were talking about that. And I thought that was so awesome. It was so cute, but like, we don't realize all the knowledge that we have to share with our kids. And, don't just share it with the people in the real estate world. This stuff works at home too. All the things we learn about leadership and personal development. Like, I really try to share that with my kids, so that, because I wasn't raised that way. My parents were the kind of people, and I love them, but like, their mindset was just so like, go to college, get a good job, and like get good benefits and work at that job for the rest of your life. And then maybe you'll retire one day, and then you can actually have a life. And that just doesn't seem really appealing to me. But they didn't know what they didn't know. So they didn't know any better, to teach us about mindset, or, that we could be an entrepreneur or anything like that. It was just, go work for somebody else our whole lives. And I want my kids to see, I don't want to push them into like what I'm doing, but it's been interesting to see that they've actually moved into these sort of entrepreneurial kind of things. Like, my oldest daughter's starting a thing with New York Life. And then my other one that's in college, the 22-year-old, she was going to be a personal trainer and start her own gym, so it's
Very
been
cool.
really fun just seeing all that stuff come out in my kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, like, watching you light up about kids. I feel the same way. I just absolutely love my kids. It's like, one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing is to gain time, right? Because I want to spend more time with them. But what I really want to highlight there is something you said that's super powerful. Is, in my opinion, a legacy is the people that you're helping them be, way more than money, way more than any asset you can ever leave behind. So, I hope something that we're saying can help someone that's like working a million hours to make a bunch of money to leave their kids. put the computer down and go spend time with your kids. Cause like
Please
the
do
time and
that.
the people that you're creating is so much more valuable than any amount of money.
Oh yeah. And you never
So
get that time back.
yeah, of course.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah. So I absolutely wanted to highlight that. I mean, that's really cool. And again, it's like kind of fun to watch you light up.
Sorry, I'm just really passionate about my kids.
No,
awesome.
it's awesome. I mean, that's the thing, is like to find your why. I mean, that's what I always say, is my why is time. I want to travel and I want to spend time with my family. And so how I can get there is going to require some passive income. And so that's really my push goal. You know, that's the reason I educate. The reason I love coaching, all this stuff is for that particular reason. I'm not saying it has to be everyone else's, but I encourage people to find that and then go after it. So love it. So yeah, I'll finally move on to the next question. I kind of rambled there, but and this is one you stole. So what books are you reading, or what books can you recommend?
Man, I am a book nerd. I love books. I have a ton of them. So obviously the Patrick Lencioni books, fantastic. And I like those with traction. So I read Traction and all that stuff, and it's so like, it's good, but it's kind of dry. And so I always say that Advantage is like the softer side of Traction. So it deals more with your organizational health. Not so much, like your rocks and what your meetings need to look like and that is important, but it does go pretty heavy into organizational health and core values and really figuring out what your mission is and that kind of stuff. So I love that. Another book that I have gifted so many times in this past year is Everything is Figure Outable. Man, I love that book. I just bought it for my daughter about 2 weeks ago, and she's reading it right now.
Cool.
It's fantastic.
I haven't heard of that, but I love the title and I totally agree. So
it's so good. It's so good. And she's got a podcast too. It's Marie Forleo. I can't say her name, something Italian, something like that. But when I read her book, I feel like we're having a conversation, and she really has a great way of like laying stuff out in like a no BS kind of manner. It's just very straightforward, and I really like her. Another really good book that I read too recently was Atomic Habits.
Yeah, I just finished that. Love that book.
That's a good one. And then for other stuff, like I loved, what is it? I keep wanting to say, it's not The Art of War. Is it The War of Art? It's backwards. Okay. Yeah, because The Art of War is like some Chinese or Japanese like samurai thing, I think. But it's The War of Art. It's the guy that wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance. I think they made it into a movie with like Will Smith and Matt Damon or something. But that's a really great book if you find yourself encountering resistance in your life. So whenever things seem really hard and you really don't know why, and you're just kind of getting down on yourself, that's a really great book for that. And it's really short too, easy read. That one and Peaks and Valleys, which I had my son just read this past month. That was his book for the month to read. And
no wonder he's talking about mindset, right?
I know, right? Well, that's kind of the goal, because he seems very open to that kind of stuff. Not that the girls haven't been, but he wants money for stuff all the time. And so I figured, what better way to give him, instead of giving him the money, I'll make him earn it, but not through chores, through actually like improving his mind. So he's read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Peaks and Valleys. And then I'm going to have him read The Go-Giver next.
Very cool. That's such a cool, like allowance, go read this book. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and then we talk about the first one we did. We would just discuss each chapter when he would finish it. That was a pretty long book for a 9-year-old, but he read the whole thing. And then when he did Peaks and Valleys, he went on a trip with his dad, and he came back home and he's like, I finished my book and I wrote a summary for you. And he had all his little stuff written out on a piece of paper, and we talked about it. It was cool.
Wow. Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's such a cool parenting tip. I dig it. Cool. And the next question is, you kind of stole it, but have you had a coach? Have you had a mentor? I know you have. And has it been worth it? I guess, I might as well change that to, do you have any tips maybe to find a good coach or mentor for someone looking?
Yeah. Coaching has been absolutely worth it to me. When I was looking for coaches, you really need to look for somebody that's doing what you want to do. I think that's the first thing. Find somebody who's actively doing the thing that you want to do. So when I was starting a coaching practice, I hired somebody that had a coaching practice, built it from the ground up. When I was building the team, I had a guy coaching me that he specialized in marketing, but he was also really good with team building stuff too. So that was really valuable. And then our first mentor, obviously, he taught us a lot of the nuts and bolts kind of stuff. So as you progress throughout your journey and being an entrepreneur, you might find you need different things. And so finding somebody who's actually doing that thing. But then I think it's really important too, to make sure that the person that you choose, that you really resonate with them. Like if you feel a little weird vibe or something feels off, they probably aren't the right person for you. You have to feel comfortable, because if you aren't comfortable with being vulnerable with your coach, that's not a good thing. You need to be able to you need to be really honest with your coach, because they can't help you. If you don't feel comfortable being honest with them, they can't do good work for you. They can't coach you well, because you're not being truthful with them about, where you're struggling or stuff like that. Like, you need to be able to be vulnerable with them. So there needs to be a level of trust there with whoever you choose. So I think those two things are really, really important.
Oh yeah, completely agree with everything you just said. I mean, it's super valuable. If you act like you have it all figured out, which none of us do, by the way, then you're not going to get a whole lot out of coaching. So you really have to be able to be comfortable, vulnerable. I mean, that's such a good tip. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So next question is, what's something that you have done that you would not repeat again that we can learn from?
Oh boy. Work with a spouse. No, I would probably do that again, but I think, well, I'm just going to be vulnerable here. That was a tough thing to go through, because we were very close and we started these businesses together, but I don't think we set ourselves up for success with that. I think had we been more clear, I think if we'd have had better boundaries with like work and home life, maybe had defined our roles a little bit better, for work, that would have helped too. So I don't know that I wouldn't do that again, or would or wouldn't do it again, but that was like a huge thing, that's like, I don't know if I could go through that again without some major thinking and planning around that, like really being clear about things. I would say like the other thing would be waiting so long to get help. I think that we fall into this trap as entrepreneurs sometimes, that we can do everything and we wear all the hats and stuff. And I did for way too long. And once I realized the power of delegation and started implementing that, it changed everything for me. I mean, it carried over from work even to home life too. So I think beyond anything else, that's probably the biggest thing I wouldn't do, is wait so long to get help or ask for help when I needed it. I think we're so proud sometimes, just you don't want to ask, because you're supposed to be a successful, real estate investor, but sometimes we need help.
Yeah. And I think, those are awesome tips. First of all, I think setting boundaries, even if it's spouse or even if it's with someone who works with you, say like clear boundaries, clear definition of who's doing what and when, and maybe who's not doing what and when. So that's an awesome tip. And then, yeah, I completely agree in delegation. I probably actually push delegation faster than I should at times. Like, I will find someone to help me with something I don't want to do because I've heard this tip so many times. So I love that you're sharing that, but I hope that people hear what you're saying. It's like, it's okay. It's okay to delegate. It's okay to, we actually touched on this a little bit earlier too, is like, sometimes in school we're taught, and this comes from Hunter Thompson's book a little bit too. Sometimes in school we're taught to like focus on our weakness. If we have a report card and there's a C on there and the rest are A's or something, you just naturally kind of like, oh, well, I need to work on that one. But in the real world, this is my opinion, is focus on your strength, find what's the A plus, and then find someone else who's got that A in that place where you had the C, and you guys work together. So that's such a powerful tip too. And I think hopefully I articulated that well in a way that, hit me, but I just think that was like super powerful. So again, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, so true.
So
Um,
true. I delegate everything now.
that's amazing. I mean, and I think the kind of excuse is it costs money. And that's like kind of the excuse of the coaching too, is like it costs money, right? But you kind of have to say, all right, well, yes, it does cost money. Will it pay for itself and how much? And,
Mhm.
there's probably times when you can hire wrong, but if you can hire the right person for the right job, you can delegate quickly. It'll absolutely pay off because you won't be doing something you hate doing too. So,
Oh yeah. Well, and you get your time back, you know.
yeah, oh yeah. Again, it's like
That's the
that's
big
the ultimate
thing.
goal. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Cool. So the next one is, what mindset tips can you give someone to propel them forward?
Ooh. Hmm. There's so many. You know, something I've come to realize, I don't know if this will fully answer the question, but I think it's relatable. Like I've realized mindset is a practice, because yeah, we can work on our mindset, but don't you find that there are some days where it's more difficult than others? It's like we read all these things and we know all this stuff, but sometimes it's hard to put it into practice, especially if you're having a really rough day, like the hits just keep on coming. And it's like, how do I keep my mind right? And I think it all starts with just having a certain level of self-awareness, in calling yourself out on stuff, and just saying that, hey, I'm acting like this right now, and like kind of dig into why that is. Why are you feeling that way? What's causing that? Is that something I can control or not control? If it's something I can't control, then I need to just let that go. And if it's something that is within my control, then figure out like what's the plan then? If I can control this, then what are the steps that I can take to, you know, address that or whatever. So I think that's really important as a mindset, is just understanding that it's a practice, that it's something you have to work at. Like it doesn't come easy. I still struggle with mindset, even though I've read every book about mindset and I really try to keep my mind in a good place. When you have a lot of things coming at you at one time, it's really hard to stay focused on your mindset. It's easy to go, I call it the dark place, where it's just like you want to have a pity party for a minute, and complain and be woe is me. And, I don't like being that person, but I find myself being like that sometimes. And I have to realize that's not who I am. This is just the situation. I'm reacting to a situation. And how can I change how I'm reacting here? So that's a big one. And then I think just having boundaries is important, and taking care of yourself, and that's not just like manicures and bubble baths and, that kind of stuff. Like I really do believe in self-care, because that really plays into your mindset too. If you're not taking care of yourself, it's real easy for your mind to get all, jumbled up and stuff like that. So finding the things that make you feel good to take care of yourself, whether it's reading a book or going outside or swimming with your kids or something to take your mind off of whatever is bothering you at the time, or some setback that you're going through. Like I did this horrible deal last year. Well, it was awful. I went against all my criteria. I lost money, and that's not normal. I haven't lost out. I haven't lost money on many deals throughout all the years, but this was a bad one. And it was hard to shift my mindset around that, because it was such a big loss. So there was a lot of things I had to do to kind of like get out from underneath that.
Well, I mean, there's just, again, you've said a lot of things in there that are so valuable. So I'm going to try and pull some out. I'm sure I'll miss some, but such good stuff. So the first thing you said was like, if it's in your control, then deal with it, right? If it's out of your control, that's such a good tip, is to let it go. If you have no power over it and it's bringing you down or wearing you out or whatever, let it go. You have no control. There's plenty of situations like that. It's like the weather or something. It's like, if it's raining, it's raining. That's it. And if you have to be outside, get wet, or put a coat on.
Yeah.
That's probably a bad example, but you get my point. If it's out of your control, don't waste your energy on it. So such a good tip. And then, mindset is a practice, and it's the analogy of working out works out for like so many examples, but it's very, very good here. You can't go to the gym for 2 months and work out every day and get super fit and then stop going to the gym and expect to have that forever, that fitness forever. It's not a reality. Same for mindset, in my opinion. It's something you have to work on, pay attention to. And then the other thing that kind of works with this analogy too is if there's something a little off, let's say you're working out and your shoulder hurts, you kind of evaluate it and say, well, what can I do with this injury? Do I need rest? Do I need to stop doing those exercises? Kind of same for mindset. If you're a little bit off, take a look within yourself. It's like, what's the deal? And the other thing that I love is you're being vulnerable is everyone has bad days. Everyone has, it gets grumpy. Everyone gets down. It's part of the gig, right? And everyone has mistakes. So yeah, if I lost money on a deal, I'd be pretty bumming for a while too. I think anyone would, but it's cool that you can admit that and then say, okay, I'm gonna get past it. That's not who I am. I'm gonna move on. So very cool stuff within that question.
Thank you.
The next one is, it's funny, we touched on this a little bit too, is what is your definition of success?
That's an easy one. I spent a lot of time thinking about that, actually. So for me personally, I think I realized a couple of years ago what success was to me, because I had been asked that question a lot and I didn't know. It's one of those things like you think you know what it is. Like it's to have, no bills, to be debt free and have X amount of doors and all this stuff. And I realized that's not really what it is for me. Like success for me is to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want. To me, that's successful. And I think that encompasses every part of your life. If I want to travel somewhere and then I can afford to do that, that's success. I can take my kids to school every single day and pick them up every single day and have lunch with them if I want to. That's success to me. That's spending time with who I want to spend time with. It's doing what I want to do when I want to do it. I'm not confined to some schedule. If I want to take a week off, I can, which is nice. So I think that's success for me. It's pretty simple, but I feel like it covers everything.
No, it's not simple. It's a good definition. Tony Robbins uses something very similar. It's like that to me is a perfect description. It's defines why you're doing what you're doing. And I love that. So to me, everyone's answer has to work for them. There's no right answer, but
right.
That's cool that you have a definition and you understand what you're going for. So next question might be a little bit more difficult. Someone asks you, why are you successful, as compared to other people? What is your response?
I guess I never gave up, like even when it was hard, you just push through things. Like there were times, especially like 2008, I remember that time being so difficult. And at the time, like my 13-year-old daughter, she was just a baby. Like she had just been born that year, actually. And I remember it was Christmas and it's like, are we going to even be able to afford to buy Christmas gifts for the kids? Like we haven't moved a property in a while, like stuff like that. And, but we pushed through it. We worked together and we pushed through it. And I think once you go through those really low lows, and if you can see it all the way through, you come out on the other side, a different person and probably better for it, because then you realize like I have been through the lowest point and I made it through that. And so I really think it's just being tenacious and not giving up and really just knowing what you want. I think when you lose sight of what you want, that's when the problems can start too. And I will say complacency too, because that's very dangerous.
Yeah, I love it. I've heard a handful of guests say something similar, and some people call it like grit, determination, whatever you want to call it. Basically like the ability to push through, continue on. So that's.
But I do want to say something about that. One last thing about that is push through if it is really something you want. But I think if you are pushing and you're having a lot of resistance and you realize like that's probably not maybe what I want, I think it's okay to stop the pushing then. I think it's okay to stop and to pivot and do something else. I don't think we we have to stay in this one thing and like see it all the way through if it's not serving us, if that makes sense.
Oh no, that's an awesome tip. If it's not serving you, then you're just pushing and you're being stubborn.
Yeah, if you're just pushing to push, that's not the same thing. You know, if you're pushing, if you keep pushing because it's something you truly want, that's one thing. But if you're pushing for something and you don't even really want it, you just feel like other people think you need to do it, or because that's, you know, a thing. You know, people expect something from you. You know, he's a successful real estate investor. He can never, you know, I think when I kind of started talking about not flipping houses anymore, it was like, oh my God, you're not going to flip houses anymore. You know, it's like, I don't have to, though. I don't have to keep pushing for that anymore. I want to do something else, and it's totally okay to do that. So think about that too.
It kind of comes back to that parenting tip that we gave, is like, if you're just pushing for more money because it's a status thing, or you're, I don't know, whatever, people are pushing you in that direction. Maybe it's worth taking a step back and say, is it worth this? So yeah, I'm really glad you caught that. I mean, it's absolutely, it's the most important thing is grit towards something that's of value, you know?
Absolutely.
So yeah, excellent point. This has been an awesome show, Melissa. So yeah, I feel like there's just so many things in here that you said that we can all learn from. So thanks for being a guest here. You know, the final thing is, where can people find out more about you, and where can they get in touch with you?
Well, thank you for having me on the show, first of all. And if people want to connect, they can go to my website. It's themelissajohnson.com. And everything pretty much about me is on there. I've got my podcast is there, my coaching is there, other shows I've been on is there, and all my social links are at the bottom of the first page. So if you want to follow anything there, I've got a lot of content on YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn, all the things.
Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Mindset Podcast. If you've enjoyed the content today, please follow this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to head over to wildoakcapital.com for more information or to connect with Eric directly. Please take a moment to leave a review or tell a friend about what you've listened to today. We hope you'll tune in again soon.